Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today we're going to take a look at the new Altenew woodless coloring pencils. I received these a couple weeks ago and I've been playing with them, and we're going to have a review today of these. I'll show you some of the things that I have used these on and I'll tell you what I think about these. Altenew is a stamping company. They sell rubber stamps, inks, alcohol markers, watercolors, little watercolor and marker coloring books that you can color and use on your cards. They're a card making company, and generally I find their products to be really high quality, and I really like their stamps. I really like their alcohol markers, which have replaceable nibs and refills. Their woodless watercolor pencils were pretty good. Generally, I'm pretty happy with this company, but just like with anything, sometimes there are winners and sometimes there are losers in a product line. Not everything will be the best, and I feel like that's what we have here in this product. Now, I just wanted to preface this with that I think Altenew is a great company. This product, however, doesn't meet my expectations of what I would expect from Altenew. But let's take a look. We've got a gorgeous chipboard box here with a magnetic closure. You can hear it kind of snap shut there. Inside, we have 2 layers of pencils. This is a set of 32, so it would be 16 on each layer. Now, the first con I have, it's kind of hard to get this top layer out. So you kind of have to fiddle around with it a bit, perhaps bend the box a little bit, and then you can pull this out. And then you've got your other layer. So there's quite a bit of packaging here for the amount of product that it is holding. But woodless pencils can be a little bit fragile, so it's a good idea to keep them in their packaging. I feel kind of like, though, when I snap these in, because I was just using them, so they're not all snapped in. I snap them in when I'm done using them for a project. I don't kind of press them in and pull them out every time I put them back, because I'm afraid that I might snap them. And I have some Koh-i-Noor ones here that I got many years ago, and some of them have snapped, and I just grabbed out colors to kind of match, just so I could do some coloring side by side and see how they held up. Now, another thing I want to preface this review with is that I only have one set of woodless coloring pencils, because the Koh-i-Noor, that's the only set I had in the past, because I didn't really like them. And so this might just be a product that I'm not going to like, because it's just not, it doesn't have the qualities that I prefer in a colored pencil. I like a soft color pencil. That's probably the first thing I like. I like a fairly opaque color pencil, so it'll show up on darker papers when I want to work on tone paper, which I do a lot. And also, for like coloring stamped images, I'm going to want to sharpen that pencil quite a bit to get in the nooks and crannies. And when you have a woodless colored pencil, you're going to be wasting a lot of material if you do that. Because all the good thing about a woodless product is that you've got all usable material, but if you have to sharpen it, then you're wasting it. Now, they came out with a woodless watercolor pencil last year or the year before, and the nice thing about that, I can show you because I have a little palette here. When you have a woodless product like that, like a woodless color pencil that's water soluble, or a woodless watercolor crayon, you can sharpen the shavings into a palette and add some water and have a paint palette. So that's what I would do if I was going to sharpen these. Of course, you can't do that with this because you're just going to have dust. It's not really going to be usable. So they suggest using a scrap of paper to shape the tip of the pencil, but you're really not going to get a good a good point. The best practice would be to always color on the edge and keep turning it as you go to try to maintain that point, but it's not going to keep a really sharp point. That would be really useful in working with stamped images. So I'm just going to set this in here. I'm going to bring over the swatch that I made, and I swatched the pencils with their water-soluble counterparts. So this would be ruby red in the new woodless coloring pencil. That's ruby red in the woodless watercolor pencil. It's a different color. I don't know if the camera will pick it up. I'm actually going to zoom in a bit so I can be a little bit closer in on these swatches. That has a little bit more warmer undertone. This is a little bit more of a blue or pink undertone. The crimson in the woodless pencil has more of a neutral red. It's actually closer to the ruby, I think, in the woodless. And the crimson water-soluble pencil is a little bit more orangey. Heartbeat's the water-soluble one's a little bit more orangey than the new one. Autumn Blaze doesn't have a comparable, doesn't have that, because there's only 24 in the watercolor ones, which is fine. It's fine to have a smaller selection of watercolor, I believe, because it will blend. It's so much easier to blend them together. Orange, I think it's about the same color. Then we've got I think that's maple yellow, about the same color. I think the other ones were pretty good matches. We have lemon, fresh lemon, then we've got lemonade, then we've got limeade, then we've got grassfield, Shadow Creek. I found the colored pencil Shadow Creek to be a little bit greener than the watercolor. Now Volcano Lake and Morning Mist, they have different names, but they're essentially the same color, so I don't know what was going on there, because I think one of the benefits if you were going to buy a stamp company's media, it's because you want to match their ink and their cardstock and their other offerings. I only have a few of their ink cubes from many, many years ago. They weren't anything to write home about. They were fine. They were pretty standard. But if you're somebody who likes to get a whole suite of products and you want your markers to match your pencils, to match your inks, to match your papers, I'm not sure if this would if that would really happen. These pencils are made in China, and they definitely feel like your typical budget Chinese product, except these aren't budget. These are $50 for the set of 32. So I don't feel like the quality is there. I feel like a lot of the money is spent on the branding and the packaging and the advertising, and not necessarily on the pencils themselves. But moving on, we've got Dewdrops. Glacier Stream doesn't have a comparable color. Teal in the coloring pencils is closest to turquoise in the watercolor pencils. There's Desert Night. That's a pretty good mix. Then you've got Tide Blue and Starlight. That's kind of like an ultramarine blue. I'd call it an ultramarine blue in most like color mediums. They have an ultramarine in the watercolor version, which is more like sapphire in their colored pencils. You've got Midnight Violet in the coloring pencils versus Lavender Fields in the watercolor. So I mean, I don't know why they didn't keep the name standard. Now Rubellite, now see, first I thought Cosmic Berry must be like Rubellite, but then they actually had Rubellite in the colored pencil. So this is the new coloring pencils. That's Rubellite and that's Rubellite in the watercolor. They're completely different. Coral Bliss is pretty close. Peach doesn't have a comparable one in the watercolor pencils. Yellow Ochre is pretty close. Sicilian Amber is pretty close. I don't know why you'd have both, because they're both so similar. I would definitely have gotten rid of one of those for a more vibrant color, personally. Paper Bag, we've got Moss, Mangrove Root. There's no watercolor version of Moon Rock, not that you need one because you got a black and then you got Jet Black. The Jet Black is not really that black, and there's also a white, which is pretty hard and weak. These pencils are hard. They're really a hard pencil, and they're a hard waxy pencil. They do remind me a lot of the Koh-i-Noor pencils, which I'm not sure if there's several lines of the Koh-i-Noor. I'm not sure what line I have, but I know it was about 24 colors for about 14 bucks, I think, when I bought them, and they're still about that price. So, the quality-wise is very similar. Colors don't match up. Koh-i-Noor are made in the Czech Republic and the Czech Republic, and these are made in China. So just for a, like, first I was thinking, are they the same thing? I was expecting to see made in Czech Republic and they to be the Koh-i-Noor, because Koh-i-Noor does, I believe, make some brands pencils. I think they make the Blick. They might make the Blick Studio pencils. But anyway, they weren't. These are made in China. There's probably other of these you can find private labeled online for a cheaper price. So I just want to let you know that, because, I mean, the packaging wouldn't be this nice, I'm sure, but, you know, just, you know, my allegiance is to my viewer, not to any company. So I just want to put that out there. So what I did first was I decided to use them in one of their coloring books. I like their little coloring books. They're kind of pricey. They're $24.95, I think, for 24 sheets. And they're pretty small, but you know, if you're comparing with buying the cost of stamps in watercolor paper versus just having these on watercolor paper or on marker paper, you know, it's not that bad if you consider the designs as part of the price you're paying, and they're super convenient and they're fun to use. So I do like them. I think they're overpriced, but I do like them. But I decided to do the first illustration in that coloring book with the pencils, and I mean, it was fine. I didn't really love using them. I have to be honest. They didn't spark joy. They just felt kind of hard and not very blendable. And you can layer them up, but they're kind of weakly pigmented. So it was hard to build up that color. And it's like, it took me so much longer than using, say, a Prismacolor or any other, even a lot of the budget pencils, I have to be honest. Now, like I said, I like Altenew. It's a good company. This product, just for me, seems a little flat, but just prefaced with the fact that I didn't really like the Koh-i-Noor woodless pencils, and I never bought any others because I felt that they were also similar in hardness. But one thing I will say that I like about these is that they're very water resistant. So if I take my paintbrush and I take water and I go over any of these coloring pencils, I'm not going to get, well, that has a little bit of movement, but for the most part, you know, they're not moving that much. They might move a little bit, like most, you know, Chinese pencils will a little bit, but they're quite water resistant. So what I did was, you know, I got a little bit of ghosting, but you know, it's not that bad. It's not as bad as a lot of them. You know, let's do a few more colors just to, yeah, just a little bit of ghosting. Not bad. I mean, that's like what Polychromos does that. It's not even like necessarily a Chinese pencil thing, but, oh gosh, I hate to be negative. I like the company. I don't, but I just, you know what I mean, right? I'm talking to you like I talked to my best friend who asked me, what do you think about these pencils? Should I buy them? That's what you're getting with me, guys. And Altenew's a great company. Their stamps, 100% recommend them. So, you know, I just feel bad. I don't want to be like, you're trashing a company that's a good company. Yes, they are a good company. So I did the illustration, or I colored the illustration with the pencils. Then I taped off the border and I went over with the Altenew watercolors. This set of watercolors, I actually really like them. I haven't tried one in the plastic case. They don't look that great. These are nice. However, they seem to be the same as any of the superior watercolors out there that run like $14 to $20 for a 24 set. So that's another thing where it's like, yeah, they're good, but you can get equivalent products for a lot less. And I'm guessing that I'm probably not going to be receiving anything else from Altenew because they sent me, I wasn't expecting it. They sent me a package of their new release things, unsolicited. But I thought it'd be a nice review to do because everyone's interested in new products when they come out from stamp companies. So I went over them with watercolors. They resisted the watercolor pretty well. So it was a fairly quick little card front to make, and I was relatively happy with it, but I didn't really enjoy using the pencils. But I don't like a hard pencil, so I also want to preface that, you know, if you like a hard pencil, you might enjoy these. So then I thought, oh, another thing I did, when I went back to the swatches for a minute, when I swatched the pencils, I also swatched them on black paper just to see how opaque they were. Honestly, the watercolor pencils were more opaque than the color pencil. So that's a color, that's a watercolor, that's a color, that's a watercolor. That's a color, that's a color, that's watercolor, colored watercolor. The watercolor ones were much more vibrant on black paper, so if you're wanting a pencil for black paper and you already have the watercolor ones, I just stick with the watercolor ones. And in fact, that's what I'm going to recommend, that if you've got the woodless watercolor pencils already, you're not getting a benefit from buying these unless you need something water resistant, because I'll show you in my coloring sample, the watercolor pencils used dry worked really well, honestly. So I'm hoping the camera will focus in. I'm just going to move that off and zoom in a bit so it can focus on my black mat a little bit. So this is the new Altenew woodless coloring pencils, and this is the woodless watercoloring pencils just by themselves. Then I thought, well, you know, maybe I need to think of these in a new light. So I thought, well, you know, a product that I was always sad to see get discontinued was Prismacolor Art Sticks, and I can show you what those look like. They are a product from Prismacolor. They have, and these are new because I had a smaller set that I use most of the time, and I haven't really used these this much, but I thought I'd break them out because they had more colors. And Prismacolor Art Sticks, well, I think they're nice for sketching on paper, not great for coloring in stamped images because they're too blocky, but I thought I would just give them a try. And you know what? Those are pretty hard too. They are much harder than my Prismacolor pencils. I actually like the Caran d'Ache Neocolor 1 wax pastels because they are nice and soft like a Prismacolor pencil. So I think it's also just part of this type of product to be hard. Otherwise it would probably snap on you like a crayon would snap on you if you're coloring with pressure. So I think that's kind of nature of the beast, although this is what I did with the Prismacolor Art Sticks. They were much more pigmented. Now I did go over them with the Altenew pencils to get in the corners and stuff, but it was much faster because I could get so much more pigment down with these. And this was also the Art Sticks, just much more pigmented, however impractical for stamping because they're just so chunky and blocky. They're definitely better for like laying down a big background on something that like a larger freehand drawing that you want to refine with color pencils later. So that's not but it did show me, it's like, you know, that's kind of nature of the beast because I don't really trust my memory when I'm reviewing products. I got to pull similar things together and see how they compare. Because honestly, for the price of the woodless coloring pencils, they were priced pretty similar to the Prismacolor Art Sticks. So that I thought would be a more fair comparison than comparing them to the Koh-i-Noor. So I used the Koh-i-Noor here, but I didn't have the exact same colors. None of the colors were a match that I had. So I just kind of used the same technique as that with the Koh-i-Noor. I thought the Altenews were actually more pigmented, but they felt very similar going down. And let's see, I did this leaf here with the Koh-i-Noor just to compare. So compare this to this, very similar, but that's like a third of the price. So just, you know, do with it what you will. So then I thought, you know what, I'm going to try the woodless watercolor pencils without water. And that's what I did here. And it's a little grainy. I mean, that was grainy too. But this is definitely grainier than I'd want it to be, but I can just add water to that. And maybe we'll do that in a second just to show you, but I wanted to show you dry. This is the woodless watercolor pencil dry. Obviously those colors were not, those pinky colors, those cool pinks were not in the woodless range. But of course you could take a little purple and then blend it out with water. And then I did the leaves here. So this is leaves with the woodless versus the leaves with the woodless watercolor versus the leaves with the regular. And so much more vibrant with the woodless watercolor. I would say get the woodless watercolor if you want to get the pencils in that range, and use them dry if you want to use them dry. However, I do like to add water to these, so I'm really curious to see what would happen, because I usually don't put this much pigment down if I'm using the woodless. So I thought it'd be fun to see how much that's going to really perk up if I add some water to it. This is probably a little bit, you know what, this is probably a little bit too much pigment to put down for watercolor pencils, just because it will tend to, they might tend to like lift off. I don't want to use too much water because it will lift it, it'll erase it. But yeah, it's a little too much pigment to use it as a watercolor pencil, just because see how it wants to kind of lift. It almost wants to resist the water when you burnish and you use it this thickly. This is again the woodless watercolor pencils from Altenew on this sample here. Yeah, okay, so if you're gonna use it dry and you're gonna put that much pigment on there, I probably wouldn't add water, but let's try it on this one too, just to see. Yeah, it tends to lift up if you put this much of the watercolor one. So if you're going to use the watercolor one dry and you want to burnish it and build it up, I would just leave it dry, because see how it lifts up. But the color saturation I think was much better there than it was there. Although, you know what, you can also use on any of these watercolor, actually on either, with the with any just regular color pencil, you can use an alcohol marker to smooth things out, and that will remove some of the grain. Let's scribble that off. You know, that'll remove some of the grain that we're having there. So I mean, sometimes it's just learning how to work with your materials, especially if you've already bought it and you're watching the review later to see what I think of a product and you've already bought it. If you've already bought it, you might as well learn how to use it to the best of its ability, or maybe even add other products to it to help it work a little bit better. Like this is going to give you more of a marker finish if you use just a clear blending marker or mineral spirits or whatever to blend it out. Now let's see what happens if we use this on the watercolor pencil. I know some people like to do that. I always just use water. Yeah, that works all right. Less lifting this way, probably because it's drier. I think I'd still prefer just to use less water with this watercolor pencil and just spread it with water, but that works a little bit better. Let's try it on the leaves here and see how that would go. Actually, that works pretty good. If you do want to use these like a traditional, if you want to use these like a traditional pencil, use a clear blending marker to blend it, because that actually works really well to get rid of the grain, but without lifting up a bunch of the color. So, you know, that would be my recommendation. Just stick with the woodless watercolor pencils if you want the pencils from Altenew, you want to experience that range, and use their clear blending marker. I think you can actually get a multi-pack of the clear blenders from them if you want to keep one just for like watercolor pencils or whatever, because you can see you do get a really nice vibrancy without lifting like you would with the water. But for me, this product would be a pass. I don't recommend it. But like I said, I think it's a nice company. I think the packaging is beautiful. The display is beautiful. But the fact that it's difficult to get these trays out, and these are really hard. So I found myself like my hands getting kind of tired, my forearms getting sore just after coloring for a little while with these. And I don't have arthritis or any strength issues. So if you have carpal tunnel or anything like that, I think these would aggravate it. But you're not going to get that aggravation, I don't think, with the watercolor ones. So my my opinion on these would be I would pass on the woodless coloring pencils, but I totally would recommend the watercolor pencils. I did a comparison of these with some very, very similar products. One was more expensive, one was way cheaper, that were almost identical with these. So if you want to check that out, I'll link it down in the video description so you can see it. Yeah, I just wanted to put this out there. It might upset a few people, but this is my honest opinion. Take it, leave it. Buy whatever you want with your money, but you're always going to get an honest opinion from me. Like I mentioned before, they sent these to me unsolicited for free, so you know, take it with a grain of salt. You know, always consult various reviews because you might have a different style than I do, and you might prefer different things than I do. But with that, these would be a pass for me. They're just a little too they're quite a bit too expensive for what they are, and even with the fact of the Koh-i-Noors, I mean, these are like $15 for a set of 24, and I would buy those again because I don't like them. They lived in my scrapbook bag for quite a while, and I would use them on crops because they were my least favorite pencil, so I wouldn't feel bad if I broke them or lost them. But as soon as I got better ones to replace them with, I just keep these as far as like being able to compare with other products, because I do so many reviews and I like to compare comparable products together. So so I do keep a lot of products on hand, even ones that I don't really love anymore. So that's my opinion with these. I'm sorry it was negative if that bothers you, but I'm gonna be honest, and I want you to spend your money on things that are going to bring you joy and enhance your art style. Maybe these will. Maybe you're like, Lindsay, I want a woodless hard pencil because I'm going to break it up into pieces and I'm going to draw on really big pieces of paper, and or I'm doing a class with kids and I want a pencil that's not going to break, that we can use every last drop. So maybe they are for you. But for me, no, I don't think they're the best option for stampers, because you're probably going to want to sharpen it to a needle point, and you're going to waste a lot of the woodless. And that's probably part of the reason why they are the price they are, is because it's all pigment. There's no wood, so you're paying for all usable product, but it might not be that useful, that practical for a stamper to do that. But it's your money. You do what you want to do. Thank you so much for watching. Please give me a thumbs up if you like reviews. And until next time, happy crafting.